This is Judge Joe Brown, and you're watching We All Be News TV, the
News-free Dixie.
News-free Dixie for the 21st century.
We All Be is under him on the one and only Dr. Randy Short. He's a true fan favorite. Mr. No Holds Barred, tell it like it is. He makes it plain. And it is an honor to have him on to talk about the 100th anniversary commemoration of the East St. Louis race massacre or race war. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, I'm blessed, and so are you.
I would definitely agree with that. And I just want to talk to you, because I think it's so important what's going on or will be happening this weekend, July the 1st through July the 3rd, in East St. Louis, Illinois, as well as St. Louis, Missouri. Could you please tell us what's going on this weekend?
Well, I'm going to start off by telling you that a person who grew up hearing about this pogrom, which is a Yiddish word for race massacre or Holocaust or genocide, was Lena Horne, who was born today 100 years ago.
Oh, wow.
She was born the day before the East St. Louis pogrom, and it was her family. I'm in the home of one of her, I guess, great nieces, and Lena Horne lost a lot of family the day after she was born. And so people wonder why Lena Horne was so angry when she could have passed for white and she could have just, moved on up. It was drilled in her head what had happened to her family out here the day after she was born.
I didn't know. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll just bring it right in. People want to know what's making Lena Horne so angry. What made her angry was that, and her family was very deeply involved with the NAACP. It was in part in response to what had happened to the extended family out here. And that came, of course, like 9 years after the Springfield, Illinois race riot. So Illinois has always been a reactionary place. East St. Louis is in St. Clair County, the southern half of Illinois, which is Mississippi as Mississippi is. Let me just lay this out for people so they understand. East St. Louis, 101 years ago, experienced something that shook the entire Democratic political party nationally. And that was Black people and Southern Illinois in particular, centering on East St. Louis, had voted out a Southern Democrat type for a Republican, something that they never imagined possible. Aside from that, the Blacks had been moving, organized, coming into East St. Louis, establishing businesses, buying property, trying to form unions, and they represented change like white folk weren't ready for. And many of these people came to East St. Louis armed and determined to enjoy their rights. Many of them came from Mississippi. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that prior to 1880, Black folks owned 90% of the property in the Mississippi Delta. And the white folks wrote the laws and through racial terrorism found a way to make the people who own 90% of the land own less than 10% of the land in a generation. So people moved looking to have a better life here. This occurred as America was preparing to enter into the First World War. We had our first racist, white segregationist Democratic president by the name of Woodrow Wilson, who had lied to Du Bois, had lied to Ida B. Wells, had lied to the NAACP and the Niagara movement, and he was saying that black people should give him a chance. They had nothing to lose. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Now, what ended up happening once Woodrow Wilson came in, he set the climate because he was a person that believed in the concept that when Reconstruction went on, white people in America in the South had lived under what is called black rule. That black people had oppressed and had stripped white people of their rights, and they were within their right to do whatever they needed to do to regain control of their lives and to put black people in their place. Let's do some quick history. In 1915, the best known black leader in America, Booker T. Washington, died. In 1915, the most radical black pastor, Henry McNeil Turner, died. In 1915, one of the surviving black congressmen from Reconstruction, Robert Small, died. In 1901, in March, George H. White from North Carolina was the last black to serve in Congress. From 1901 to 1929, there were no blacks in Congress. I'm just trying to give the context for this.
Oh, definitely.
You had years of racial conflict. In 1908, you had riots in 50 cities. At least 20 people were killed in riots in reaction to Jack Johnson winning the world championship. As well, you had a race riot in Springfield, Illinois. In 1906, you had a race riot in Atlanta, Georgia. And we had the Brownsville incident in Brownsville, where it looked like 167 blacks faced possibly being hung by Roosevelt for shooting at white folks, for mistreating them. So you get Woodrow Wilson, who comes in and systematically dismantles what used to be called the kitchen cabinet. These were prominent blacks who kept it real, talking to white Republican presidents about what the black community needed. Woodrow Wilson got rid of it. He had a racist wife who traveled throughout my native city of Washington, D.C., demanding that the federal government be resegregated. In 1914, the largest black community in America was that in Washington, D.C., and it was not superseded in size by Harlem until after 1920. So the largest black community in the country was being resegregated, racist police being brought in, black people being fired from their jobs, and this was all being done, orchestrated from the White House. This same president wanted a segregated army, so he made things even worse than what they'd ever been for blacks in the military as the United States moved towards war with Germany and the Central Powers. This same I keep saying Roosevelt, but because he did something else. Woodrow Wilson, in 1915, a couple of other things happened. The Fraternal Order of Police, a paramilitary racist organization, in my opinion, was established. It was established the same year that Birth of a Nation, the nation's first blockbuster film, one of the greatest and highest grossing films in American history, which was a leading box office film for 10 years, from 1915 to 1925, which parallels the Ku Klux Klan having its greatest membership. In fact, the Ku Klux Klan was reestablished in 1915, along with the Fraternal Order of Police and the Birth of a Nation film. And the Birth of a Nation film premiered in Los Angeles and in the White House, where President Woodrow Wilson said that this film that celebrated the lynching of blacks was history written in lightning. 1916, Woodrow Wilson was reelected, although many black people had tried to go back to the Republicans to vote against him, and black folks had to be punished. East St. Louis in 1916 Black people were close to approaching anywhere from a third to half of the city's population. Because they voted in a block, they were led by a man by the name of Dr. Bundy. They had tried to establish unions. They were setting up stores and businesses not to be under whites, but to be independent. They were afraid that blacks were getting uppity. In particular, the blacks in East St. Louis, unlike blacks all over the country, had demanded jobs in the government, demanded contracts, and were doing things that we don't even do today. So the National Democratic Committee, now called the Democratic National Committee, along with the State Democratic Committee for Illinois, along with the St. Clair County Democrats based in Belleville, the same city that the man who shot the people in Congress in Washington, D.C. at the baseball diamond in Alexandria, Belleville, Illinois, they plotted to teach blacks a lesson. They brought in the racist Jew by the name of Samuel Gompers, who was the president of the A.L.L, their longest serving member. They taught to people in the 33rd Infantry of the Illinois National Guard, the police, and others. And in May 28th, 1917, 3,000 whites converged on downtown East St. Louis and began beating, raping, torturing, and lynching blacks, pulling them off streetcars. One black woman was scalped. One teenager was castrated and lynched. 270 black homes and properties were destroyed. From the 28th of May all the way up to July 1st, whites terrorized, harassed, and threatened blacks. They would drive late at night and do drive-by shootings to terrorize the blacks. On the night of the first, blacks who had been tired of being mistreated had organized a sniper detail to protect themselves from being shot or being attacked or being bombed, like what was commonplace in Chicago. In fact, more homes were bombed in Chicago in the early 1900s than what was bombed in Birmingham, Alabama. An unmarked car of white terrorists driving through the black section of East St. Louis, home to as many as 25,000 black folks. Black men shot and killed one of the men in the car. It turned out to be policemen moonlighting as Klansmen. The white community was indignant, and they blamed the blacks. They didn't recognize that they were defending themselves. So they plotted. July 2nd, 1917 was a warm, if not sweltering, Sunday. Black people went to church, and it was a tradition for people to have big dinners on Sundays because they're Southerners. You're a Southerner, you know what I'm talking about. And they waited for the people to leave church and for it to get dark. And thousands and thousands of white people surrounded the black section of East St. Louis, setting fires and shooting anyone that tried to leave their homes on fire. They burnt dozens of city blocks. The entire black community was effectively forced out of the city. There were battles between blacks who were armed and a larger number of whites. The terror included white women killing black women and babies, so much for feminists being black women's allies. And they're still not black women's allies, no matter what silly sisters who are fooled by what they say think. These people strung up every black that they could and hung them from the lamppost. Blacks were trying to make rafts to get across the Mississippi. Whites were on the shore drowning and shooting and sniping to keep blacks from getting away. One way of escape was Eads Bridge, which spans the Mississippi. And they were shooting people as they tried to get out. Now, the black folks lost many, many lives, but so many people were killed that there were points of ceasefire where black morticianers could come from St. Louis and collect the bodies and take them out for proper burial. These morticianers and groups like the Odd Fellows, believe it or not, some of the black secret societies were training and drilling for warfare before the attacks came. That's why they were better able to resist this horrible thing that happened to them. The people smuggled guns in the caskets into the city, smuggled people out of St. Louis who had been hiding in basements and cellars under dead bodies. And this carnage went on until the 3rd of July, where people decided that they wanted to do fireworks to celebrate the freedom and democracy that America extends to everyone. And they celebrated the 4th of July, and the fighting continued for a few weeks. But the main thing that happened was on the 2nd and 3rd of July. Hundreds and hundreds of black homes were destroyed, millions of dollars of property, and the number of people estimated killed. The low number is 50, which isn't a good number, and it's always been agreed that there's never been an accurate count. They have no idea how many black people died in East St. Louis. It was a national scandal. Imperial Germany under Kaiser Wilhelm and others denounced America and even asked black men who were looking at serving America to consider not fighting for the United States. Moving right along, certain people like the NAACP came up with a higher number, but they were convinced to reduce the number that they had. They had it at 400, and they got talked down to 150. And reality, brother and sisters, and all those listening, maybe several thousand blacks died. If you get people in a community and you set fires and people can't escape and you're shooting, how many people perished in their homes? And with the fires, there will be no bodies that you can find. If you drown them in the river and they wash down the Mississippi, there are no bodies. The reaction to East St. Louis, was incredible. Horrified blacks across America began buying guns. Just like in this year, African Americans are buying more guns than ever in their history because of their concerns about the current social and political climate. The NAACP, which had had a march in 1915 against lynching that drew 10,000 people, had another march down Park Avenue in 1917 in which 15 to 25,000 people showed up. The Honorable Marcus Messias Garvey was able to use fear and concern about East St. Louis to reinvigorate a struggling UNIA. Howard University, PhD, the first PhD in mathematics, Kelly Miller warned that if nothing was done about East St. Louis, people would be shooting in Washington, D.C. It needs to be known that within 2 years and 3 weeks, Washington, D.C. would indeed have an East St. Louis type of Holocaust plan, but black resistance, because black people had bought guns in the thousands in Washington, fought off white mobs and actually beat them. They beat them so resoundingly until most of the history that you'll learn about 1919 starts in Chicago, because in D.C., for every black that died, 3 to 4 whites perished. East St. Louis reinvigorated the black press, gave more influence to the Urban League and to the NAACP and to other organizations. And so the legacy of it is that black people and East St. Louis were the first urban community, although facing superior numbers, to use armed resistance and refuse to just die because white folks were angry. This had been the tradition all the way up to East St. Louis, that periodically white folks would get angry and they would just kill and beat black folks. Black folks wouldn't fight back, hoping that white folks would calm down, like what happened in Wilmington, North Carolina, or with the White League in New Orleans, or the genocide in Memphis. So we now live at the end of the East St. Louis century. The lessons that need to be learned was that these people didn't want to work for anybody. They were doing more than voting. They wanted to control their own lives, and because they looked like they were poised to take over a city, they had to be made an example of, the same way that what happened to Black Wall Street and what happened with expulsions all over America. So I want everybody to remember East St. Louis. And if you have an opportunity, if you live anywhere near St. Louis, starting on July 1st, we'll be at the Better Life Family Center on Page Street in St. Louis from 1 p.m. until about 7 p.m. The following day, starting at about 6, 7 p.m., we will lead a procession from the convention center to the Eads Bridge to memorialize our ancestors that died trying to escape. That will be on the Eads Bridge between St. Louis and East St. Louis. And on the 3rd, we'll be at the Greater St. Mark Family Church. It's 9950 Glen Owen Avenue in St. Louis. And if they want to reach out to me, I'm wrandyshort@gmail.com, or you can look for this information. There's an East St. Louis Commemorative Committee on Facebook. People should come. And we need to remember, it's not just East St. Louis. It was Detroit 50 years ago in July 1967, where the police killed way more than the number of people that they said. There was even a massacre of black men who were in the same building as white women, called the Algiers Hotel. And also there was Newark. So there's a lot for us to understand, that we need to understand that resistance and resilience is important, and we should never feel like we are victims, as long as we can remember what has happened to us and that we're still here. Then we're victims. We should never feel badly about what happened in the past because they're evil people, but we should see ourselves as great and strong and significant, that we've been able to survive and thrive in spite of the opposition. And so that's my quick talk to you. And I want to say this to you. Black Wall Street, maybe 400 deaths. East St. Louis could be as many as 4,000. Whenever you look at the numbers, they'll tell you there were just 6,000 blacks in East St. Louis. What did they base the 6,000 number on? In as much as 15 to 20 to 25,000 people were there. Where did they get the number 6,000 from? Is 6,000 the number of people that survived? Are you hearing me, brother?
I'm hearing you.
My God, 15 is the low number. The even lower number is 6. Well, if there were 15,000, but you could count 6,000 after, that means they killed 9,000 people. If it's 20 and you can only account for 6, then you killed 14. No matter how you look at this, this is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, mass murder of black people in the Americas. That's more people than 9/11. It's more people than Pearl Harbor or the Alamo or the Maine. In fact, many of them put together. If it's any of these numbers, and you have to ask yourself, why so much silence about East St. Louis? One reason I told you, the Democratic Party orchestrated not just this one, they orchestrated Black Wall Street. The Democratic Party is responsible for the lynching and murders of thousands and thousands and thousands of black people systematically. And we see them as the good guys. I'm not saying become a Republican or a Libertarian, but I am saying to you, how can we trust a party so blindly as we do, when in the past they organized the burning and lynching of black women and babies.
Wow. Dr. Short, you said so much in so little time, man. I mean, I think people gonna really appreciate what you put out here. I had went to an event last night concerning the Memphis invaders. They're like the Black Panther Party of Memphis. They met with Dr. King just moments before he was assassinated. And it is amazing that we don't know a lot about who we are, about this history. And some of the worst chapters have been suppressed. But at the same time, you know, you got this lost cause movement of white people putting up these Confederate monuments and trying to protect that heritage. They say it's not hate, it's heritage. But what about East St. Louis? What about the Memphis Massacre? What about Elaine, Arkansas? These are the things that we should be remembering and resurrecting and putting in the minds of the masses. Because that East St. Louis riot, it not only affected Lena Horne, but also Josephine Baker and Miles Davis, who grew up later in East St. Louis.
And Catherine Dunham.
And Catherine Dunham. Is that coincidence that all these prominent, strong black voices were affected or grew up in that type of environment?
Yes. And East St. Louis is a model. East St. Louis was the model for 50 years of how you get black people out of an area. You just strong arm it. And it ended more or less with Detroit. And now they've replaced it with dope, gentrification, LGBTQ, closing the schools, and deindustrializing black areas and denying us credit. The goalpost changes, but the game is the same. Keep us down, prevent us from achieving full manhood and womanhood, freedom, rights, and self-determination. And we have to understand that the people in East St. Louis, the lie is that blacks were coming in to take jobs.
Right.
The truth was they voted. And what are the Democrats telling us to do? Vote. Think about it. Years ago, they had us killed for voting. Now they want us to vote against our own interests. The same people that want to send food abroad to help starving children are cutting food support for families. The same people who tell us that they care about families have Planned Parenthood in our community. The same people who tell us that black folks need to improve their morals tell us gay is the new black. The same people who say that this is a land of opportunity bring in people and give them work who are in the country unlawfully and deny those who are born here an opportunity to even participate in the workforce where they live. We need to come together. In fact, I need to say this to you. In the aftermath of the East St. Louis genocide, they needed somebody to blame. So they blamed the black people who had stood up and had been trying to move the people forward and blamed them for conspiring against white people and threw them in jail and ruined them. Now, what was interesting was that it was such a bad crime until some white policemen who had helped instigate the riot and directed the killing, and some National Guardsmen were jailed. It's interesting that Blue Lives Matter laws make it almost impossible today. By the way, laws enacted by President Obama, the Lord and Savior of black folks who don't think and don't like truth or reality, that you could get in trouble for killing black people in 1917. And in 2017, you don't get in trouble if you're a policeman and you murder black people. How far have we really come? Orlando Pastel, Sterling Austin, Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Akai Gurley, Sandra Bland. In 1917, just maybe, they may have gotten justice and segregated Ku Klux America, but they can't get it now. And black folks think that they've made it because we have a few billionaires that don't even like us. But we have some folks in Congress. I call them the Congressional Black Caucus. They let this alcoholic woman who looks like she's got on war paint instead of rouge, Nancy Pelosi. She's the biggest drunk since Smirnoff went into business.
Wow.
In fact, you know what? She should live in the hood. She wouldn't have to walk that far to get to her favorite place, which is a liquor store. We have this little daughter, a daughter of a corrupt, racist Italian fascist pig named D'Alessandro, and her fascist cop or fascist pig brother, who was the second Mayor D'Alessandro. He was there when they had the Martin Luther King riot. The father was there cracking heads when Baltimore was segregated. This daughter of a segregationist, Nancy Pelosi, literally controls the 46 or 45 Negroes who are in Congress. Mind you, in 1917, there wasn't one black in Congress. In 2017, there are 3 senators and about 45 members of Congress. And we can't get convictions for officers that kill women and babies and unarmed men, people with their hands up, people laying on the ground. A.L.L Ford shot laying on the ground in front of his mother. And by the way, I need to say, Latino cop shot A.L.L Ford. A Latino cop shot Philando Castile. A Latino cop shot and killed Arthur McDuffie in 1980 down in Miami. We need to be careful about this people of color BS. You're not for me, you're against me. If you kill me and you shoot me and you beat me, I don't care what your color is. You're just another kind of cracker. In fact, you're a cracker that went to the beach. In fact, a lot of crackers like the beach. In fact, like the beach so much it's segregated. And if you live anywhere near water, that's the property that they want. So I don't care what your tan is. I care about the content of your character and your actions in relationship to your fellow human beings. I'm going to conclude here, brother. But have them contact me, WRandyShort at Gmail, or Randy Short in Twitter, Randy Short in Facebook, although they have me blocked, but you could still reach out to me. Dr. Randy Short in Twitter, Dr. Randy Short in LinkedIn. If you want me, you can find me. But people need to get the word out. And it's not just here. It's other places. Brother, we need to talk about Knoxville, Tennessee. In 2 years, we will. Did you know up to as many as 2,000-3,000 blacks were murdered in Knoxville, Tennessee?
Oh, at one time? 2,000 or 3,000?
Yes.
I did not know that. And I was born in Knoxville, but I get an eerie feeling when I go through Knoxville.
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes. That's why you have the eerie feeling. I'm going to close out here by saying, I had nightmares about East St. Louis before I ever knew about East St. Louis. I had so many nightmares until I was trying to figure out where this dream I had of 2 kids watching their mother die on a raft in the water with the city on fire in the background with people screaming and shooting. And are you feeling me? I started reading about East St. Louis, and I never told anyone about the nightmare until I met this woman who's Lena Horne's great-great-niece. And I told her about the dream. I said, am I crazy? I have these vivid nightmares of black people being murdered. Something's wrong with me? And I told her about that. She says, no, you're not crazy. That's my grandmother on the raft that you see, and the 2 children that you see. That's my father and his sister.
Wow.
What you dreamt was exactly what was happening to my family. And so I'm in her house now, and it's the 2 of us that are the ones behind this. Her name is Mother Azima Catherine Kennedy Holt one of the first, if not the first, mathematician and physicist black female hired by NASA.
Wow.
I must let you go. All right.
Thank you, Dr.
God
Short.
bless you.
God bless you.
Okay.
We love you,
All
madly.
right.
Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks.